G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down all the drop spots for the EU and NA East All-Star Showdown FNCS. This is a $3 million tournament taking place on one day, 6 matches of solos. There is so much money on the line. One of the most hyped tournaments we've watched in such a long time. I would argue, I know it doesn't feel like it because there's been less of a build-up. This is more hyped than all the FNCSs before. That was like 5 to 6 weeks build-up with 2 days for $3 million. This is one day when 90 of the players were just invited straight in. But we've had word from Epic that has a lot of pros really nervous. We had Epic make a statement in the closed Discord to all the players. We would like to remind all players that anyone found to be teaming or splitting a POI, section 8.2.2 in the official rules is strictly against the rules, and we will be monitoring this throughout the duration of the event. All players who play in the FNCS All-Star Showdown Solo Finals will need to accept the in-game official rules prior to participating in the event. So, why is everyone so freaked out? That's pretty much what every pro is doing. Now, let me just show you what the EU and NA maps look like before I break them down. You'll probably notice it looks like a giant puzzle. This is literally a giant puzzle with all the different pieces fitting together. Are you gonna try and tell me that these pros haven't organized this? And that's why they have drop spot maps. This is why players look at a map to figure out where they're gonna go. That already, if you break it right down, is against Epic's terms of service. That is a form of collusion. You are, prior to the match, having a level of understanding and conversation with your other opponents about how you're gonna play the game. That's against the rules. But when you break it down a step further and you actually look at some of these major POIs, there is entire teams splitting them like they're giant puzzle pieces. Like, you get that building, you get that building, I'll take this building, you take that building. Like, it goes even deeper, but this has happened for forever. This has been happening since forever. And while some people don't like it, a lot of people don't really understand it if they're not involved in the competitive scene. It's just how things go. And I know what you're thinking, well, Aussie, just ban them. Firstly, it's everyone. You can't just ban everyone. But secondly, how are you going to tell players when they can and can't fight? I know this takes it a step further, literally splitting a drop, but if you drop one side of Misty and the opponent drops the other, and you've gotten a couple of tags on a player that's across the water and you already have your Storm Surge, why would you fight them? It's a bad idea to fight them. You're only going to throw your game and their game and run a whole bunch of risk by fighting them. And I know what you're thinking, Aussie. Not every situation is that clear. Players will literally drop in the building next to each other and not even shoot each other. Yeah, because it increases their chance to win. These guys want to win. And when the line is that blurred, when it's that much of a gray area, you can't try to define when a player should and shouldn't take a fight. If you've ever ran a scrim Discord, if you've ever been in a scrim Discord, when it comes down to trying to ban players for certain plays, it is next to impossible to define what is a good and bad play. Especially when a lot of the times it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So for Epic to try to do that is going to be nearly impossible, but they clearly are aware that this is happening. I mean, they see these maps, they'd be stupid not to know that this is going on. So I think they're making a statement to try to make players a bit scared, because we have seen players banned in the past for collusion and teaming, players trading Storm Surge, players deliberately not fighting. Sometimes it's a lot more obvious, literally rotating next to each other, not fighting. And I mean, Epic is clearly going to punish that and is clearly going to action that, but it's like in the past with pickaxe swinging. Back in the day, you would pickaxe swing to signal with your opponent that you didn't want to fight. Epic said that that was going to be bannable because it's a form of signaling and collusion. But it's such a hard area because, again, sometimes you just don't want to fight and you want to tell your opponent, let's not fight, because you don't want to be idiots. Sometimes you only take the fight. I mean, it's like arena, right? You'll be rotating and a lot of the times you'll shoot the guy because you just assume they're going to shoot you first, because you assume everyone's an idiot. Even at the top level, when they're competing for millions of dollars, the pros have the same mindset. So before we look at the drop spot maps, I wanted to address that because a lot of people are asking me like, oh my gosh, they're not going to be able to drop what they want to drop. All these players are going to have to change their drops. They're not. None of these players are going to change their drops. If anything, they'll be a little bit more careful about making it too obvious. If any of these guys are in Discord calls or are communicating with each other prior to the games, they'll try to make it not look more obvious. But I don't think they're going to change up how they play because, again, it's not an excuse and it sucks. I wish this could be fixed, but every pro thinks or knows that every other pro's doing it. So they're going to still do it. It's just that mob mentality. And yes, I don't agree with the fact that this should be in the game. I wish there was a way to stop it, but I'm just realistic. I know there isn't. Like I said, there is no way to force teams to fight and ban players who do and don't fight. There's no way to do that. You can't. You have to let these players do it. And when they're very clearly teaming, then you can try to action it. But for the most part, trying to say pros can't split their drop and they can't, you know, not fight and they have to fight, it's never going to work. But let's jump into what you came for. Let's look at the NA East drop spot map, point out some of my favorites and some of the good drops, then let's talk about EU. Actually, just quickly, guys, I wanted to remind you, today is going to be your last chance to cop any of the merch. If you want the hoodies, the t-shirts, the mouse pads, the cap, AussieAntics.com is your last chance. The store will be closing for a few more months, so get in while you can. Looking at the NA East map, like I said, it is pretty well split up. And if you want to look at this map, the link will be in the description down below for NA East and EU. I will just warn you, if you want to look at the EU one, because they actually use the dropspots.pro map, it does take a little bit to load. If you open and they're not there, that's why. But both of them are there. You'll notice there are some big teams who are clearly all going the same POI. You have Gabe Tahi Sprite holding down Believers Beach. You have Jack and Slacks splitting each half of Slurpy Swamps. You managed to have Saf, Avery, Stretch, and Zayt all going Lazy Lake because Zayt has been invited into this tournament. And then you got Illis just in the mix. I don't know why Illis thought he'd jump in the middle of that. I have no idea how that's going to work. We have Casca and Smacked at Retail Row. You have Day and Miro at Dirty Docks. You have DGen getting one part of the across from the orchard at the Corny Complex. You have Age as the other part, and then Skittles getting the Henchman IO House at the top. You have Bully and Frist both at Steamy Stacks. Like, you have Bucky and Macwood at Craggy Cliffs. You get where I'm going. It's hard to get angry at any of these teams or call them out when, again, basically everyone is doing it. But despite that, who are some of my favorites out of NA East and based on their drop spots? Honestly, any of the really good trio players right now who have a decent drop, but I'm actually not looking at the major POIs. I think the major POIs will shake up a lot. Like Stretch, Avery, Saf, Illist, and Zayt. There is not enough loot for 5 people at Lazy Lake. So I don't know what their intention is. I don't know what their plan is, but that's not a lot of loot. I would pick Stretch as my favorite to win for NA East if he had a better drop spot. I know you're thinking, Aussie, he's surrounded by his teammates, like you just said, you know, they're not going to fight. I just don't think he's getting enough loot. I'd almost rather if he had his own POI or he was contested to maybe beat an easier opponent. I'm looking at players like Edgy, who have the south side of Caddy Corners, looks really, really good to me. I would love to, again, say Centered or Commandment. Again, Edgy and Commandment, one side gets one half of Caddy. You have Commandment on the north side. Justice is in the mix. That's going to be a little bit scarier. Whoever gets contested or if anyone changes their drops is going to change this a lot. Bucky and Macwood out of Craggy, that is more than enough loot for 2 players. Kanata at Risky looks fantastic. And honestly, the most underrated drop on the map right now for solos, in my opinion, is center map. This is where I've been dropping in arena solos on that southwest side of the center. There's a double henchman chest that is 100% chest spawn on top of itself. I have very regularly dropped down, got a blue AR, a pump, sometimes even a spaz, full shield just from those 2 chests. Then you have all the other chests in the middle and around the edges. I know that this is the area of the map that got destroyed and everyone thinks it's terrible. It really is a fantastic drop spot. An Aspect, he's still got it. You got Scope nearby with a really good drop spot, Polarized. Gabe Tahi Sprite out of Believers Beach. They do have a lot of loot between the 3 of them, but when you have these edge map drops and you're most likely not going to fight, I'm imagining Gabe Tahi Sprite aren't going to fight that often. Maybe. I've been talking about this. Who knows? These guys, the gloves could come off. It's like game 5. You're like, hey man, I'm in 2nd place. If I need my surge, I'm going to beam you. So I'm just... In the past, we've seen suspicious stuff going on with the teams. Some of these guys might not have these agreements, and I don't know what they're saying behind the scenes. We'll have to see. But when they've got to drop that far on the edge of the map, and they're splitting it, and it's going to take a while to loot, I don't know how good their chances are for getting Storm Surge, which scares me a little bit in solos. I would actually have a lot more faith in Jack, Slacks, and Acorn. Acorn's currently going the log jam. Jack and Slacks at Slurpee, that's fast to loot. It's a lot of shield, and then there's a lot of other teams and players around them that have to rotate. I would say they are looking fantastic. I know I'm mentioning a lot of trios, but a lot of these guys still have the best solo players in them. I would argue that, in my opinion, probably 3 of the best solo players in the region is Jack, Stretch, and Kanata, just from what I'm seeing in scrims and their placements in the past. They are really solid teams. So I know I'm talking a lot about trios, but it's because most of the good trio players are still really good at solos. And when a lot of these guys could get potentially contested or headshot sniped, if any of them gets headshot headshot snipe 2 games out of 6, that's their tournament done and dusted. It's solos at the end of the day. I would not be surprised to see someone completely underrated pop off out of nowhere. So I don't know. It's hard to pick. Again, a lot of you guys are going to ask about the big names I haven't mentioned. Clicks is at Pleasant Park, but he is contested by Who Fishy and a Zervo. There probably won't be any splitting going on there, but honestly, sometimes I like that. Clicks being contested actually makes me a bit more confident. My man is a very good spawn fighter. Unfortunately, he is going up against Who Fishy, who I think is one of the most underrated fighters in NA East. I learned this today when I was on the official broadcast. Who Fishy actually has the fastest closeout time to elimination of anyone in NA East. So once he starts a fight, he eliminates the enemy faster than any other pro in NA East. It's going to be tough. There are so many big players who could pop off out of nowhere, but as you can see, you're getting the storyline here. There's a lot of major drops with a lot of really good trios splitting them. Is that going to work for them or against them? I don't know. Moving over onto EU, it's a little bit different of a story. There's actually way less drop splitting going on. You do have drops like Dirty Dogs with Virox, Michael, and Mexi. You have both Kami and Seti going the Kami split, but they're pretty far apart. Teak is also there, so all three of them are kind of in that area as well. You do have Endretta and Refscard both going Steamy Stacks. Matzo and Amplifier going Pleasant Park. Like, there are some trios in here who are going drops. They go with their trios, but quite often there's another trio in the mix. Like, if you look at Slurpy Swamps, you've got pretty much players from a few different trios, 2 from one and 1 from the other. So them dropping on each other is going to be interesting. Are they going to potentially, you know, play against the other player? It's hard to know, but EU across the board is way more interesting because there is way less of the splitting going on. These guys want to go their own drops, and if you follow, obviously, EU's playstyle, they're very aggressive. I think they'd honestly rather not have their friends and trio mates at their drop spot because they're like, hey, I'm going to fight, and I don't want to fight you. Whether it's out of respect because they play with their teammates, they must think they're good, or whether it's like, look, man, half my strategy is like, if you're like Noah Riley, for example, I don't want Rezon and Vidil at Believers Beach with me because if they're there with me, I can't fight them. If I do fight them, I know they're very good fighters and I don't want to have that hesitation. I want to be able to key for my surge. I want to fight anyone around me and not have to worry or think about who it is. So I would have to say for this in solos, EU's doing it a lot more right. There are a lot less splitting going on, and it's always been a little bit like that because EU's practice scene has never been as strong as NA East. The communication between all the pros has never been as good. There's language barriers, there's more pros, there's like 5 different discords they're all split between. NA East is a lot more organized, and I think that's what leads to NA East to kind of just knowing what's going on a lot more. They have the drop spots already organized. For example, NA East had a drop spot map like 2 days after solo FNCS was coming up. So it's just like, once it was announced, once everyone knew Trio FNCS was over, everyone figured out their drops. It's way more organized, which you could argue is more of an like kind of an emphasis on collusion. There's more communication going on, but that's just how things always work. So are some of these EU teams that are following that mold, like Virox, Michael, and Mexi, for example, out of Dirty Docs, how are they going to get their surge if not on each other? I have to think they're going to fight each other in some way because they're going to have to rotate out of Dirty, up over the mountain into Kami, Seti, Teak, and Thomas HD, 4 very difficult players. If they get a far west zone, I genuinely don't know how these players are going to cope. So it's going to be interesting to see. As far as my favorites out of EU, it's really hard to pick. I actually think one of the more underrated ones is Andelix out of the Hydro Dam. He is looking incredibly strong as well. Savage at the Triple House. Savage has got to be one of, if not the best solo players in EU. Triple House is a fantastic drop, but it's very, very edge map. If anyone can make it work and has figured out the strategies and the rotates, I think it's Savage. You have Tayson getting all of Orchard to himself. That is a fantastic drop. It has options for Peppers as well, which we know in Stack Solos is one of the best drops on the map. You have to think Hen is one of the favorites up there, but it's going to depend who's going to get contested. How is Hen actually going to hold down his drop spot? Because right now, I'm looking at the drop spots across the board and there's no massive standouts. Hen's getting Misty Meadows, but he's contested by 2 other people and there's going to be a lot of people around him. I said this on NA East. It's going to be tough. It takes 2 headshot snipes out of 6 games, and that is pretty much it, done and dusted. Benji has a really, really good drop as well. I love the IO high houses. I think they're some of the best drops on the map. Henchman chests are guaranteed every game. Now there's no recon and railguns. They drop so much loot that is fantastic, but he's getting contested by Pink. So how much is that going to play into it? Chapix has, if Chapix gets the double chest that I was talking about, center map, and he gets the bridge as well, that is going to be insane. But Rezumi, I think Rezumi is how you pronounce it, is taking center map. I highly doubt they're going to want to give up those 2 henchman chests to Chapix, but across the board, it's very, very hard to pick. It's solos. I'm excited for it, but as far as predictions, those are probably my few. It's hard to know. All right, guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please chuck a like on it. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.